Looking at Brian Hooker, my gut says he is bracing for a murder indictment. I say that because, since he fled back to the States about a week ago, Brian lawyered up fast to fight the growing accusations that he murdered his wife Lynette Hooker, and his defense team is already going on the offensive. In a recent network interview, his new defense attorney pleaded with the public to give her client the benefit of the doubt. In my line of work, that is a tough sell. Brian has been wrapped in a thick cloud of suspicion since the minute she vanished. Let's review the file. Lynette disappeared on April 4th during a couple's getaway in the Bahamas. They were allegedly on a small dinghy when Brian claims rough waters threw Lynette overboard into the dark sea. Bahamian police actually locked him up on April 8th, but they let him walk just a few days later. Upon release, he swore he would stay on the island until his wife was found. Then he bolted for the States. The very next morning, claiming his mother was sick. Meanwhile, local authorities are still dragging the waters for Lynette's body completely, without her husband's help. But that official timeline was not good enough for Lynette's daughter, Carly Ellsworth, who flew down to the Bahamas with her boyfriend to run her own investigation into her mother's sudden disappearance. I recently sat down with Carly and her boyfriend Steve to review the evidence they dug up. Let's look at the facts. You and I are going to unpack this case file together. Pay close attention to the evidence right now. Trust me, the psychological profile we are about to build is chilling. For those who have been following my case notes, let's keep digging for the truth. Listen. It has been 3 weeks since I first opened the file on Lynette Hooker, a 55-year-old Michigan woman who vanished into the Bahamian waters on the night of April 4th after a boat ride with Brian. His official statement was simple. She slipped off the dinghy. The surf was rough. He could not pull her back. He drifted 9 hours before hitting shore. Any seasoned detective knows that statement is garbage. The weather reports contradicted him. The oceanic drift patterns contradicted him. The suspiciously missing dry bag contradicted him. Nothing fit the crime scene. But today is different because detectives just secured evidence that does not just look suspicious. It proves his alibi is physically impossible. Lynette's Apple Watch, that little pink device she was photographed wearing right before she took her final breath, was found back on their main sailboat. The exact vessel Brian swore to police they never reached that fatal night. Her watch was on that main boat. Put your detective hat on and think about that. It blows Brian Hooker's entire timeline to absolute pieces. Stick with me. Let's analyze the crime scene photos. I want you to study this surveillance picture with me right now. Analyze it closely. This is the victim, Lynette. 5:44 p.m., April 4th, 2026, by the pool. Less than 2 hours before her suspected murder. Notice that bright blue scarf tied on her head. It catches the eye right. Highly visible. Incredibly distinct piece of evidence. People do not just forget a scarf like that. And track the green cover-up layered over her black two-piece bathing suit. Log the black fanny pack, either strapped to her waist or resting on the lounge chair right there in plain sight. Note the sunglasses. As an investigator, this is a dream witness description. She is wearing multiple distinct layers and vivid colors. She is completely unmistakable. Anyone passing her on the docks that evening would perfectly recall her exact physical description. Jump to the next morning. Search and rescue crews have Brian surrounded during the initial crisis response. These are the brave responders who spent the next 72 hours breaking their backs, trying to recover his missing wife. And they ask him the standard protocol question. What was she wearing? Give us a description so we can track her. Help us find your wife. Brian looked at those men and said, black two-piece bathing suit. End of statement. I have seen the incident reports. That was his complete psychological response. 2 different lead commanders confirmed that exact statement in their official sworn interviews. Both witnesses swore to it. Black bathing suit. That was his entire description. He omitted the scarf. Omitted the green cover-up. Left out the fanny pack. The sunglasses. Nothing. And listen, from a detective standpoint, I need you to process this because it is crucial. Think about the person you love most. A spouse, a parent, your absolute best friend. Now imagine a tragedy strikes them tonight, and at dawn, a police officer grabs you by the shoulders and demands, what were they wearing when they vanished? I guarantee you your brain would instantly recall every single microscopic detail. You would shut your eyes and vividly picture them standing right in front of you. You would visualize the shirt, the shoes, whether their hair was tied back. You would picture those little details you never consciously memorized until your survival instinct demands them and they come rushing back. Because that is the psychological response of a person in love. Brian Hooker was married to this victim for 25 years. He was supposedly sitting 10 feet away from her. You and I need to look at this together. 90 minutes before she vanished, he sat by her pool. Yet he magically forgot her bright blue head scarf. That scarf sat right on his wife's head. He completely forgot the green cover-up. Forgot the fanny pack. Forgot her sunglasses. Just told cops black bathing suit. Bare bones. My detective brain screams one thing here. Brian Hooker was not hunting for his missing wife. Because a real husband searching for the woman he loves vomits every tiny physical detail to search and rescue. He is frantic, desperate. He yells out, "She wore a bright blue scarf. You can spot it for miles. Watch for a green cover-up. She carried a black bag. She had sunglasses on." Brian gave investigators the absolute bare minimum to skirt suspicion. Then he just went quiet. That isn't grief. That is the cold silence of a suspect who knows she's gone forever. Notice that pink Apple Watch. Lock that digital clue into your mind. Because in my 15 years on the force, a detail like this breaks a murder case wide open. The Royal Bahamian Police pulled Lynette's pink Apple Watch directly off their sailboat, the Soulmate. The exact same vessel Brian swore under oath that neither of them ever reached that deadly evening. Let that sink in. Let's trace Brian's timeline together one more time so you see exactly why this forensic evidence is damning. The suspect claims they left the Abaco Inn dock around 7:30 p.m. 12 minutes in, he alleges rough seas hit. Screaming winds. Lynette falls overboard. Engine dies. He cannot restart it. He drifts 9 hours, washing up at Marsh Harbor. He never returns to the Soulmate. Neither does Lynette. That is his official alibi to detectives, to the press, to anyone asking questions. By his logic, that device belongs strapped to Lynette's wrist right now, drifting in the dark ocean or washed ashore somewhere, still fixed to her corpse. It absolutely shouldn't be resting on an empty sailboat nobody boarded. Yet it was. Investigators stepped onto that deck and bagged it. As a detective, I only see two possible scenarios here. Scenario 1. Lynette actually survived and climbed back onto the Soulmate. Meaning his entire police statement, every tragic Facebook post, his wild tales of rough waves, all just a calculated, cold-blooded lie. Scenario 2. Brian returned to the Soulmate alone, long after the fatal crime against his wife was already finished. That is it. Those two options. No innocent alibi exists. There is absolutely zero version of Brian Hooker's official statement that places her watch on that deck. Zero. But the psychological profile gets even darker here. That Apple Watch was tethered to Lynette's iPhone, and her phone ran on the Soulmate's Starlink satellite internet. In detective terms, here is what that proves. The split second that watch caught the boat's signal, it synced. No human interaction required. No buttons pushed. Completely automatic data dump. And when that connection hit, the truth uploaded. Her pulse. Her exact GPS coordinates every single final motion her body made. Timestamped to the exact second. If her phone hit that deck too, boom, every digital breath log, every single digital handshake with that Starlink router is permanently recorded and buried on a server right now. The forensics exist. And this next part makes my blood boil as an investigator. Brian wore a heavy-duty maritime GPS watch. Witnesses swear the guy never took the thing off. Meaning that specific hardware tracked his exact location every minute of April 4th into the early hours of April 5th. When cops brought him in, they tossed it in an evidence bin during booking. Standard routine. Then incredibly, they handed it right back. The Bahamian police completely failed to seize it for a homicide investigation. Didn't download his tracking data, never imaged it, tossed it in his property bag and cut him loose. The prime suspect walked out wearing his own alibi. Next morning, he flew back to Michigan. God only knows where that watch is now, or if that digital footprint has been permanently wiped. Authorities are totally tight-lipped. But I know how suspects operate. That watch holds the true location of Brian Hooker. Down to the second. Check out this map with me, because the ocean currents prove he's lying. Brian claims the fierce winds dragged his drift boat northwest for miles across the Sea of Abaco, dead drifting to Marsh Harbor for 9 long hours. But a resident on Lubbers Quarters, that southern island, found a missing paddle washed up on their private beach right after the crime. A local bagged it, handed it to the cops. We showed them a photograph of the exact matching paddle still sitting on the suspect's boat, the Soulmate. They confirmed the match. Now you and I need to look at this search grid. South. The husband drifted north toward Marsh Harbor. His paddle drifted south to Lubbers Quarters. Same current, same night. Same wind, completely opposite directions. As a detective, this is the detail that bothers me. The green seat cushioned the flotation device the suspect claims he threw to the victim as she fell. That evidence washed up 100 yards south of where he landed on the shoreline, meaning it drifted with him the entire way, for miles, all night long. Landed right beside him on the beach. But his paddle did not follow him. His missing wife did not follow him. Her neon green dry bag, highly visible and buoyant, never drifted his way either. Yet he claims they hit the water at the exact same time. Forensics tell a different story. Because floating objects caught in the exact same current on the same night do not just randomly scatter to all 4 points of the compass. Unless the suspect dumped them in the ocean at completely different times. Or he tossed them overboard at different locations. The tide chart does not lie. Water currents leave a forensic trail. I saved this piece of evidence because honestly my investigator brain still cannot process it. There is a bizarre incident from the suspect's time in Bahamian police custody that the press ignored, and you need to hear it. When local officers cuffed him on the Soulmate and loaded him onto a patrol boat heading to the holding cell in Freeport, he went over the side, handcuffed, straight into the ocean. The patrolman had to dive in and drag him back aboard. His defense lawyer confirmed the whole thing. He suffered some minor cuts on his leg from the struggle. Now let's step back and look at the psychology of that moment. The prime suspect in a missing persons case involving someone going overboard in these exact waters suddenly throws himself overboard while in police custody, wearing cuffs. His lawyer called it an accident. Maybe it was. Maybe the suspect panicked. Maybe the hull just caught a bad wave. I cannot prove his intent, and I will not pretend I can. But as a former detective, here is my biggest red flag. That smartwatch, the digital device tracking his exact maritime coordinates, plunged into the salt water with him, and it survived the dunk. Then the local cops just handed the device back to him like a set of house keys. No chain of custody, no data extraction. The cops never stopped to think this device could verify his alibi. They just handed over his property and told him he was free to go. The prime suspect walked out. GPS tracker on his wrist. Plane ticket in his pocket. Gone. Listen to this next part closely. That is the suspect on a national broadcast, staring into the lens, telling the public that absolutely nothing would stop his search for the victim. He stated that for the public record. Once they let him out of the holding cell, a local rescue volunteer, a guy who spent days grid searching for the victim while the husband sat in a cell, handed him a contact number. A local boat rental spot. Because the suspect had been telling every reporter with a microphone that he planned to charter a vessel, head back to the crime scene, and hunt for his wife himself. His exact alibi. His broadcasted promise. So my colleagues and I ran the phone records. The suspect never dialed that number. Not a single time. The morning after his release, he visited the precinct. Grabbed his smartwatch. That crucial digital tracker the island police returned, without extracting a single byte of forensic data. Slapped it right onto his wrist. Hopped in a cab. Hit the airport. Boarded a commercial flight. And fled straight back to Michigan. Case closed for him. The suspect, who publicly swore he would never abandon the search, just packed up and ran. The grieving husband, who claimed recovering the victim was his only mission, his sole focus, never bothered making one phone call to rent a search boat. Never returned to the open water. Never searched. And his wife remains a missing person. Still lost somewhere in the Bahamas. Waiting to be recovered by someone who actually wants the truth. Here is a piece of evidence you and I must consider. The bar at the Abaco Inn on the evening of April 4th was not empty. It was packed. Tourists. Local boaters. Couples eating dinner on the patio, watching the sunset fade over the horizon. Patrons drinking at the bar. Just a beautiful crowded Saturday night in a vacation paradise. And several eyewitnesses spotted the suspect and the victim together. Not in an old photo. Not on a screen. In the flesh. Sitting right there. They observed them. They noticed the tension. Multiple witnesses have since detailed the cold, dark atmosphere between the couple in the exact hours before the wife vanished without a trace. And at least one patron snapped a photograph of their dinghy tied to the dock. Today, those witness statements are being corroborated. Those images are being forensically verified. I never present a piece of evidence I haven't fully vetted, because a homicide investigation requires absolute precision. But I will guarantee you this: the eyewitnesses sitting at the Abaco Inn that fatal evening know exactly what was unfolding in front of them. They were standing right there. They observed everything. And now, cold case investigators know they exist. Join me next time, as we dig deeper. Listen to me. You and I are about to look at something heavy. Lynette Hooker's daughter Carly flew down to the Bahamas totally alone. No press. No slick lawyer hovering around. Just a grieving kid who needed to stand exactly where her mother took her final breath. She stepped onto the Soulmate, walked the cramped hallways of that boat where her mom spent the last 4 years of her life. I know that feeling. Scanning every cabinet, tracing spaces, still holding her mother's fingerprints. Then she spotted a necklace. She fastened it around her neck for the interview. When they asked her what being back on that vessel felt like, she called it chilling, eerie. She claimed she saw nothing out of place. But then she said something else. It is a detail that has haunted my detective brain ever since. She told national television that she is genuinely terrified. Terrified her stepfather might just beat a murder charge. Her exact words. A kid talking about the man who raised her. The guy supposed to protect them. She fears he walks away completely free. And honestly, looking at the evidence, she should be scared. Let us review the facts together tonight. Brian Hooker sits up in Michigan. He hired a Grand Rapids defense lawyer, telling everyone to hold their judgment. Right now, there are 0 formal criminal charges on paper. Bahamian prosecutors say they need more time to build the case. Meanwhile, the United States Coast Guard has a massive, active criminal investigation running. Search warrants hit the Soulmate hard. Investigators are tearing through seized electronic devices as we speak. Then there is Lynette's Apple Watch, that little pink band strapped to her wrist at 5:44 p.m., the day she vanished. The exact same watch found dumped on a boat she had no business being near. It sits in a secure evidence locker, while forensics cracks the data. That digital witness logged everything. Her location. How fast her heart pounded. Every single second. Until it finally stopped.